Some stories don't start with blood or shadows. They begin in seemingly harmless places. A church basement, a quiet evening, a man who had his life in perfect order. His name doesn't matter anymore, because what happened to him isn't about identity. It's about contact, about standing too close to something the mind cannot hold. He was the kind of person people trusted. Intelligent, kind, steady. The kind of man you'd point to and say, "Be like him." He had a degree, a future, meticulously laid out plans. He didn't chase darkness or play with things he didn't understand. He just showed up, one day, in the wrong room. His cousin invited him to a Deliverance prayer night at a small community church. It looked normal from the outside. Warm lights, plastic chairs, people smiling a little too sincerely. No one warned him. No one told him that belief isn't necessary for exposure. You don't have to believe in fire to get burned. He sat in the back, intending only to observe. He wasn't mocking or impressed, just a witness, or so he thought. Then, they brought in a woman, quiet, thin, her hood pulled low. She wasn't dramatic or wild, just present. The moment she entered, the atmosphere in the room shifted. It didn't get colder or darker. It just became aware, as if something else had arrived with her. They began to pray. He kept his eyes down, wanting no part of it. And then, the woman lifted her head. She didn't look around the room. She looked directly at him. Her gaze was precise, unmistakable. And she said his name, calmly, correctly. First name, last name. Then she started telling him things he had never said out loud. Not crimes or scandalous secrets, just small, quiet things. The kind of truths you file away because they're too private to confess. A fleeting thought he once had while driving. A promise he broke to himself and never admitted. A name he had whispered into his pillow when no one could hear. She spoke them as if reading from a list he never knew existed. Something inside him cracked. It wasn't like shattering glass, but more like a seam, slowly opening, part of the mind not meant to be accessed while conscious. He stood up. He didn't remember deciding to. His legs just moved. The room seemed to stretch. The walls breathed, and the people around him blurred into indistinct shapes. Someone reached out to steady him, and he recoiled as if their hand was fire. The woman didn't shout or threaten. She only said one more sentence, her voice even. "How can you speak of freedom when you have never forgiven yourself?" That sentence lodged itself in him, a splinter in the mind. After that moment, he could never close that door again. He left the church and just started walking. No destination, no plan, just motion. He traveled miles without realizing it. By the next morning, he was in another city, his clothes wrinkled, his eyes hollow. His family found him days later, disoriented and dirty. He spoke slowly, as if language was a coat that no longer fit. They took him to a psychiatric hospital. For a while, he improved. Routine helps, structure helps, quiet helps. The world becomes less sharp when you're given permission to stop holding it all together. But healing is fragile. His sister, loving him too much to understand the risk, believed he just needed to be home. Familiar walls, family warmth, a bed filled with memories. She signed him out and brought him back. For 3 days, he seemed almost himself again. He laughed at small things, recognized faces, and slept through the night. But healing is not the same as closing the door. On the 4th night, something shifted again. It wasn't violent or loud. He simply woke up and stayed awake, staring at nothing, listening to something no one else could hear. When his sister asked what was wrong, he didn't look at her. He said, softly, "She knew things I never forgave myself for." And then he added, "It's not the sins that break you. It's the truths you never wanted to face." He wasn't afraid of demons or voices. He was afraid of his own memory. He was terrified of the part of him that remembered everything he had tried so hard to bury. He told his sister the woman hadn't cursed him. She had revealed him, exposing the side of himself he'd spent his whole life keeping quiet. and that is what finally broke him. Not evil, not possession, recognition. The mind can survive almost anything, except being forced to see itself without preparation. He was admitted to the hospital again. This time, he didn't argue. He even managed a small, sad smile and said, "I shouldn't have been in that room." I'm telling you this story because curiosity isn't harmless, and watching isn't always safe. When you step into places where the mind is deliberately opened, you must understand that something might look back at you, and if it speaks, it won't roar. It will whisper the one thing you don't want to remember. And in that moment, you will realize the monster was never in the room. It was the part of you that you refused to face. There are places the soul is not meant to enter without armor, and there are names you should never, ever answer to when called from the dark. He learned that the hardest way a person can, and if you're listening to this, maybe you were meant to hear it before you walk into a room you aren't ready for. Some doors don't just open, they invite, and once you're inside, you are no longer a witness. You are known. Thank you for listening. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing for more content that explores the unseen. Stay safe and be mindful of the doors you choose to open.